I'm going to be talking about ADAPT for transparency for giving. Uh, it's a clearinghouse. So my name is Mike Salim, and I'm the Chief Technology Officer at American Data, based in North Carolina. And we're primarily a web hosting company. We have thousands of customers nationwide, worldwide, including several US government agencies. But totally separate from that, we're also now actively working on DApp development. My own background, I'm an engineer with a degree in electrical engineering and computer science from University of London and Rensselaer. And I'm also a CISSP and PMP and PE, just some background. The DApp itself, today I'll be showing you our Transparency for Giving Clearinghouse DApp, which I mentioned. Its purpose is to empower charities and nonprofits, people who and everyone who donates to them, to have a system which has a built-in capability of transparency and trust. Now, Rich was talking about a great charity application as well. This is something completely different, but it's also related to charities. So the purpose of this DApp is that it's going to provide a built-in capability of transparency that it can enforce. This will fill a much needed void in the industry, improve efficiency, and encourage people to donate with trust and add substantial value to the system. So the charity industry is quite large. In the USA alone, over $380 billion were donated annually last year, 2017, according to statistics, for all manner of good causes. Worldwide, of course, the numbers are much larger. While most charities and NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and nonprofits are well-intentioned and they do a great job, nevertheless, there is no public visibility into where or how the money that they receive is spent. We just have to trust that they're doing a good job. And there is, it's a fact, like it or not, that there is significant waste, fraud, and mismanagement in many cases. Not in every case, but in many cases. So what this blockchain-enabled DApp will do is it'll bring a capability that will enforce a new level of trust, transparency, efficiency, and value to be built into these systems, allowing this ecosystem to function all that much better. So let me dive into how this DApp actually works. So it starts with charities or organizations similar to charities, nonprofits, NGOs. They can self-register and they agree to receive funds through the system. That's all they have to do. There's no expense on their side. They just have to have a wallet, a cryptocurrency wallet, basically. And then we have service providers. Now, service providers are organizations, individuals, even sometimes companies that perform the services that charities need. When charities receive money, they have to perform whatever it is they're going to be doing with that money. So they have to, in turn, spend that money on service providers and so on. And this is where, currently there's some inefficiency, there's some mismanagement, maybe some fraud even sometimes, and lack of transparency. And then we have the third component of this ecosystem, which is the donors themselves, the donor community, all of us. I'm sure all of us give to charities of our choice throughout the year. And we do so with, we're just trusting them, but we have no real knowledge or visibility where our money went really. And we're just trusting that everything is going to be used properly. So that's the main mission statement of this DApp. So what this DApp does is it ensures that all funds that are received are dispersed via the blockchain. Any funds that are received through this DApp are going to be on a blockchain. They're going to be coming in through some cryptocurrency, Ether in this case, and be dispersed through the blockchain. So there'll be complete accounting just by the nature of the blockchain as to where that money is going. All transactions are logged to the public immutable blockchain and can be browsed at any time. I will now present a short video demonstration of a few key features of the DApp. The DApp is still in development. I'm going to show how the DApp is actually deployed, smart contract, how a smart contract gets deployed to the blockchain. I'm going to then demonstrate how a charity gets added to the blockchain, and how a supplier gets added to the blockchain. Now, many of you are obviously familiar with how the dApps work, but many of you may not be. So this is for everyone's benefit. We'll start with basically the basics. So I'll demonstrate how a smart contract is deployed to the blockchain. So here we're showing, I'm showing you an application known as Ganache. So what Ganache does is it simulates the Ethereum backchain. When we're doing development, we could, but it wouldn't be a good idea. We could actually use the main Ethereum mainnet. If we did, we'd be spending every time we have to run a test. That would be silly. So we use tools that simulate the Ethereum blockchain, and this is what this does. So here, this simulator actually creates accounts, test accounts. They have 100 Ether in each account. Well, it would be nice if it was real Ether, but it's pretend Ether. And because I've just fired off this DApp, this Ethereum simulator, Ganache, there are no transactions in there. It's just a fresh transaction, a fresh simulation of the chain. Now I'll show you what happens when a smart contract gets deployed. So here we have a smart contract. It's all been completely developed, and today is the big day. It's time to launch the DApp, launch it to the main Ethereum mainnet. So I'm going to use a tool called Truffle, and Truffle will actually perform the process of putting it on the blockchain. So here we go. I'm running Truffle now, and what's happening is the smart application then gets compiled into bytecode, and that bytecode gets put onto this blockchain. This is a one-time event for each smart app. So it doesn't happen every time a transaction happens. You only deploy the smart contract once, and once it's deployed, that's it. It's out there. You can't change it. So this is the process that happens. So here we go. Now here you'll notice in the back, we saw those contract calls. There were no transactions to begin with. Now there are transactions that actually created the contract. So that's essentially how a smart contract gets deployed. So next, I'll show you how a charity gets added to this smart contract. So we have the smart contract is up and running on the Ethereum blockchain. It's running, and now we need, now a charity comes along and says, "Hey, I like this. This is another way for us to receive donations. This is great. So let's add ourselves to this clearinghouse." And as I mentioned, there's no cost to them to do that, and really no particular effort. All they have to do is register. Every charity who registers will have an Ethereum address. So here, this is my front end, and it's basically got a few functions on it that show how the key functions work for this step. So here there are some there's a way for donors to donate to the charity, and for charities to actually spend the amount they've got received on suppliers. And here's how charities get created, added to the blockchain, and here's how suppliers get created. So for brevity, I'm just going to demonstrate these two functions, the adding of a charity to the blockchain and adding of a service provider. So here we're going to be adding a charity. A charity is going to have an address, an Ethereum address, or basically a wallet address. We're going to use one of those simulated account addresses, just plug it in, and then plug in the name of the charity and its URL. Of course, a live application will have much more information for the charity to add about itself, but for demo purposes, that's all we need. So here we're adding the American Red Cross This is not the real URL, and of course, we're not really adding the American Red Cross. It's just a demo. So here we go. We're going to create the charity. Click on the Create Charity button. Now, when we do, it's going to create a transaction to happen to the blockchain. And that I'm simulating with MetaMask. MetaMask is an application that runs in the browser, in every client's browser, or it can run, but it simulates an Ethereum wallet. So every transaction like this is going to cost a little bit of Ether, a little bit of gas. And here we go. All you have to do is click on that and charity is created. Now let's see if the charity was really added. There were 2 charities in there already. Let's see if this new charity, American Red Cross, got added. I'm going to refresh the screen. And let's see, there it is. American Red Cross just got added. And I should point out, this is not being added to some simulated database or something like that. This is actually being added to a live blockchain. A blockchain is not hosted on any particular server somewhere or hosted by some organization. It's out there on the distributed, decentralized blockchain. So that's how a charity is added. Next, I'm going to show you how a service provider is added. Now, adding a service provider is very similar to adding a charity, but there is a key difference. Charities can self-add. There's no reason for charities to not be able to add themselves. Service providers, on the other hand, and this is where the trust part of the system comes in, this is key. Service providers have to go through a certification and verification process. I'm not going to demo that particular process, but it's basically it's a process that's outside the DApp itself. So service providers are vetted, and then they're added by the owner of the contract, the organization or individual who is running this DApp. That would be myself in this particular case for the demo. So here again, a service provider would have an Ethereum wallet address, which I will add, and then name and a URL. Of course, in real life, in a real application, a service provider will have much more information than that. But here we go. We'll pick another address for the service provider, and I'm going to plug that into the service provider. Oh, I'm sorry, I was running the charity simulation. So let me just stop that. Just fast forward that. Sorry about that. So here we're adding a new service provider, child transportation services, to the blockchain. And as I mentioned, unlike adding charities, service providers have to be added by the owner of the contract. Same process again. There's a small transaction cost, a gas cost. And once that is, all this transaction cost will be performed under the hood. And there we go, the service providers added. Now let's see if it was really added. Currently, we only have one service provider on the blockchain. Let's see if this new service provider got added. So let me refresh the screen. There you go. There's the new service provider. So that's how a service provider gets added. So just to recap, a decentralized application consists of the following components. There's the blockchain itself. This particular decentralized application that I have in the demo is running on the Ethereum blockchain, but of course, the apps can run on any number of other blockchains. The smart contract itself, that is the program that is deployed once only to the blockchain, and that's what contains the smarts to run the contract. The client software, this is the software that every user will use. Every person who wants to make a donation will run the client software, will run the client software in the browser. Any charity that is adding themselves or When we add a service provider, it's going to be added to the client software. This is written in JavaScript, and it's just hosted on a standard server, just like any other website, and it can run in any browser. And finally, we have the Ethereum wallets or cryptocurrency wallets, depending on what cryptocurrency is being used. In this particular demo, of course, we're using Ethereum. Uh, so the clients will, uh, donors will have their own wallets, the charities will have their own wallets, service providers will have their own wallets, and that's how the transactions get tracked and locked throughout this whole process. In this simulated development environment, the Ethereum blockchain was simulated with Ganache, which I showed you. The web server was simulated locally again on my computer, development computer, on a light server. Smart contract is written in Solidity, which is a program of choice right now for Ethereum, for the Ethereum dApps. And then the browser client was written in JavaScript and jQuery. The Ethereum wallets are simulated with MetaMask. So that's a typical development environment for blockchain development in the Ethereum environment. What are the benefits and cornerstones, key points of this dApp? What does it do for us? So it brings transparency through the use of the blockchain. We have an accurate, immutable, and public record of where the money is going. There is no way to alter that record. It's there with the appropriate front end. It can be browsed and viewed anytime. And trust is another very important aspect. Only trusted and vetted service providers are used. So when a charity receives all its donations and it has to decide what to do with the funds, it's only going to use those service providers that are listed on this dApp and that have been vetted and approved. Value, it reduces or eliminates opportunities for waste and fraud and mismanagement, which adds great value to the ecosystem, to the charity and giving ecosystem. Efficiency, it allows reuse of existing service capabilities. Now you have right up there, every charity can see all the trusted providers that and who have been vetted and pick the ones that they choose. So this creates a very healthy and competitive open marketplace for service providers and for charities. So how will this dApp pay for itself? How will it work from a business standpoint? So the dApp will charge a small and reasonable processing fee. I'm just giving an example, 0.5%, half of 1% maybe. And this will be a one-time fee every time a donation is made, and that's the only fee that will be charged. I mentioned gas fees. Those gas fees don't go to the dApp, they go to the Ethereum ecosystem, the miners and so on. So the 0.5% fee or whatever that fee is will pay for transaction fees, hosting fees, ongoing development, maintenance, and business operating expenses. This will, of course, need a good and targeted marketing and business development plan, but with an appropriate marketing plan and business development plan, if we estimate just capturing 1% of the market, or encouraging 1% of that $390 billion market that I mentioned to give through this application, and at a fee of 0.5%, just the year one revenue could be $19 million, just as an example. And of course, if this dApp becomes popular and grows and marketed appropriately, the market share and revenue will be higher. So that's basically the business side of the dApp. How long will it take to develop this dApp? It will require some serious development and marketing. So the dApp development itself will probably take 3 to 4 months, 1 or 2 skilled dApp developers. The front end, JavaScript and jQuery and that typical Java front end development will take another 4 to 6 months, 2 to 3 persons. All this work will be done in parallel. To develop a quality application, of course, requires test and QA and all that process, good engineering to be built into the system. Uh, one important, very important aspect of DApp development is that you don't get a second chance if you have a bug in your DApp. Uh, you have to start over pretty much. There are workarounds or ways around it, but it's a pretty complex environment. You have to get it right the first time. It requires skilled, experienced, quality personnel to do, especially the DApp development side. On the marketing side, it's going to take a good 6 to 8 months to do all that, the marketing process with key people, with the right contacts. We have already started making contacts, in that area. They have the key idea here is to encourage or make contact with the right organizations, the large, high visibility organizations, as well as small organizations. Have them come on board, explain to them the benefits, suppliers as well as charities, and that's how the system will kickstart and then grow. Of course, there's project management. So this is the effort and schedule that this DApp will probably need. A quick recap on the corporate background. So American Data Technology, based in North Carolina. And the founder, that's myself. I was actually a part of the team that developed the NSFNet, the National Science Foundation Network backbone at IBM, which is the precursor to today's internet. So I have that on my resume. The company itself has 3 data centers, 2 in North Carolina, 1 in Virginia. And our hosting customer base, we focus on high compliance, high security hosting. So we have several US government agencies as well as large and small businesses nationwide and worldwide. That's our URL. And myself personally, as I mentioned, I have a BS and EE in electrical engineering and a computer science master's. And I also have security certifications, project management certifications, engineering certifications. I've also published or contributed to NIST cloud security and forensics publications, which are used by the federal government and the IT security industry in general. I'm currently the Chief Technology Officer at ATI, and I have been since 1997. For that, I was at IBM in Connecticut and North Carolina. Blockchain experience, this is a new technology, so I'm not going to pretend that I have years and years of experience, but I have personally have taken Jimmy Song's, many of you may have heard of Jimmy Song if you've been keeping tabs on the blockchain. I've taken his class. That was a great class back in January. And then I've, of course, a graduate of this particular class as well. That's my contact information. Feel free to contact me, my phone number, my email, and I'll be happy to provide answers. Any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Thank you.
That was incredible, Mike. Taking nonprofits and letting them raise money in your DApp and forcing them to spend the money on trusted service providers. That's key, right? Like,
yep.
Then everyone knows where the money's going. 100% of the money goes towards the cause, as opposed to operating costs or, who knows where the money would go otherwise. So phenomenal application.
Exactly. And donors can have they're not going to check every single day, but when they do donate, they will have peace of mind that, yes, I'm giving to a charity that for sure the money is being well spent.
Love it. Feedback, questions, anyone? Make sure you unmute yourself before you start talking.
Hey, Mike, this is Kurt again.
Hi, Kurt.
Yeah, this is a good presentation. I did have a question. So the service provider is somebody who provides essentially like a financial service to the nonprofit. Do they convert the Ether to cash, or what can you explain that?
That's a great question. So no, a service provider would not be someone like that. A service provider, for example, let's take it's a charity that is put in place to take care of hunger.
Okay.
So a service provider would be a food distributor. or
Okay.
a transportation, a trucking company, organizations like that that actually do the work. The charities themselves don't actually have employees that would, make the food. They would go and,
Okay. So
yeah,
who they contract with to
yes,
provide
contract,
whatever specialty services they need.
correct.
Okay. And then the second thing is, um, most nonprofits they operate with the kind of the minimum amount of transparency necessary to maintain their nonprofit status. So to make things more transparent seems like that's not a big value add for them. So it almost seems like your best bet is to go after the government to get them to like put in place some kind of mandate that says we need to track the money a little bit better. Because voluntarily, I don't know anybody who would want to disclose any more than they need to. And so that's a question of like, what is the value of for the nonprofit itself to say we're more transparent when necessarily they just really don't. They want to give the minimum amount of information necessary.
You are absolutely right. That's a key point. So, why would anyone want to disclose more than they need to, even if they're not doing anything shady? There's just
Hmm.
no incentive to do that. But
Yeah.
here's where life gets interesting in the blockchain world. So, like it or not, here it is. There is a way to be transparent, and if your competitors, some of your competitors are doing it, sooner or later you're going to have to do it. Why?
Hmm.
Because where is your income coming from? It's coming from donors.
Yeah.
Donors are going to start understanding that, hey, I go to charity A and they're up on this blockchain app, and I can see exactly where all this money is going. Charity B, they're equally reputable probably, but they're refusing to be on this blockchain, or for some reason they're not. Who should I pick? I have $100. That's all I got to give. Who would I rather give to? So slowly the money is going to start gravitating towards those organizations that are more transparent, and that's
Yeah.
going to drive the incentive.
Yeah, you'd almost want to do the same thing that healthcare. I think one of the healthcare companies is Grasshopper, that they rank hospitals, and so you would create a website that says like we rank hospital or nonprofits on their utilization of blockchain technology, and so you would get all the information and disclose it, saying no, none of these companies do, and then you could filter by yes, and then it forces them to like do it because they're on this website and they're like, oh my gosh, I gotta just do this. That's what they do with like Grasshopper. Is like they rank hospitals whether you like it or not, and you have to register with them to figure out how they even come up with their matrix. So you have to pay them to have their consulting come out and do all this stuff, and it's such a joke, but consumers look at it. So that may be an opportunity for you to say, look, we will be your blockchain expert and we'll show you how to implement this. And then that's where your money comes in. And
That's
that's
awesome.
what also onboards people.
I'll have to look that up. Grasshopper. Thank you.
Yeah, I believe it's Grasshopper. I kind of slipped my mind. But yeah, fantastic. Thank you for the presentation.
Sure, you're welcome. Thank you, Kurt.
Hey, Mike, this is Moshe. So I have this question about the usage here. So if I'm a donor and I'm putting some money at some charity, at the end of the day, I want to see some kind of a report, because I'm not going as a donor to go over individual transactions where it's not organized in a nice way, and I won't spend a lot of time to figure out what's going on.
Right.
So I see two things here. One is you need some tools to look at the blockchain data and organize it in a way that would provide value, some kind of a summary, some kind of reporting that would make sense for the donor. The second thing is, if we're going this path, what do you see as the differentiator between those reports and the donation providing some annual report that explains how the money was spent?
So that's a great question. And as far as reports, yes, I did not demonstrate that part, but that is definitely a key part of the DApp. So, and as you correctly pointed out, who's going to go into the blockchain and browse, record by record or block by block? It's just not feasible for most people. only forensic scientists might want to do that. So in reality, you really want a good, concise front-end report that shows anytime, the kinds of reports that would be of interest to donors. Donors aren't interested in every little nitty detail, but they are typically would be interested in broad, getting a good picture of where the money is going and how exactly, what kind of reports we build and what we put into those reports. That will be the subject of, after we do some further studies as to what the best reports are, and we'll certainly implement all of those reports so that not only donors but charities themselves and service providers can get on their own, what's happening with their own transactions as well as everything else. But the differentiator, and that's a great question, what is the difference between BizDAP putting out its reports versus the reports that these organizations put out themselves? The key differentiator, and this is important, is transparency. And within the blockchain, there is no I'm not saying that every charity is putting out fake reports, but there are when you see a report, you have to trust that that's what it is. Yes, it's been audited probably by CPAs and so on, but it is still not a transparent report. Here with the blockchain, there is no need for any auditing other than it's self-auditing, and you can get the report in seconds at any time. So that's a key difference between those two reports. So I think if I understood your question correctly, Moshe.
Yeah, I think that's the question. I mean, the generating reports out of the blockchain, which would be equivalent to reports that, let's say, a CPA provides, is not a trivial work. I mean, you have to understand the payment, classify it correctly. It could be a big project by itself.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's, I'm sorry, Mike, I just want to jump in.
Sure.
I think the report that Mike is generating, guys, is going to be like, essentially, which service providers did they spend money on, right? And that's very much in a smart contract. So, like, let's say there's 3 service providers, one for transportation, one for food purchasing. And then let's say this, the nonprofit spends 50% of their money on transportation, 50% of their money on food. Then they would see that receipt over there. Mike's talking about beyond that, like maybe we can go take where did that ether go from there, right? But essentially the nonprofit can only spend the money on those service providers. So that's like the main report. And then there's like further reports that can be generated, which certainly is not trivial work, but yeah.
And just to, and that's exactly right. And just to, again, point out the difference between those reports and the ones that CPA would generate. CPA's reports are primarily focused on financial aspects such as balance sheets, profit and loss statements. That's not what this DAP is focused on at all. As Pawan pointed out, it's focused on where the money that is coming in is going, and how well it's being spent. So that's a key differentiator between those two kinds of reports. Both are important. You have to have the CPA reports. This is not a replacement for those, but this is an additional. Most people look at those statements, those reports from CPAs, and don't really have any interest in them or much understanding of what they're saying.